I'm very much enjoying being here this evening. I'm Art Bell, and this is Coast to Coast AM. Now, I'm going to open the program in a very different way tonight, and I'm going to tell you about a mystery. Now, this is not your average mystery, and I'm going to have to set it up as best I can so you can try and understand what I'm about to tell you. As you know, I've mentioned certainly enough times I'm a ham operator, amateur radio operator. And I've been a ham consecutively on the shortwave band since I was 12 years old. 12 years old. And in all those years, I'm 59 now, I have heard, personally experienced what I'm about to tell you about twice. I have experienced it vicariously through others, 3 or 4 times. But what I'm about to demonstrate to you absolutely turns the laws of physics on its ear. It just turns it on its ear. Let's discuss a few basics about radio, that mode which I'm speaking to you on right now, all right? Radio travels at the speed of light, which is 186,000 miles per second. That's how fast radio travels, 186,000 miles per second, all right? We've got that basic down. Now, the way shortwave radio works, or if you're listening to me, for example, right now at a distance on one of the big 50,000 watt boomers scattered around the country, or countries, I guess I have to say. The way it works, the way you're able to hear it, 500, 1,000 miles away, whatever, is as follows. It bounces off the ionosphere. Radio fires from the tower of the radio station and scatters, and part of it goes to the ionosphere. AM radio, shortwave radio, they both have similar characteristics. Well, how is this done? It might be instructive to sort of give you an idea of how the layers of some of our atmosphere are arrayed. Now, as we go up above ground level, above your head, we have 0 to 10 miles up. And in the 0 to 10 mile area, we have terrestrial weather. We have weather systems of varying sorts. Now, from about 20 miles to about 30 miles altitude, we have the much disputed ozone layer, 20 to 30 miles up. Then, if we keep going up, we get up to about 80 miles, and there, roughly, we have what's called the D layer of the of that substance or that thing that reflects radio signals. The D layer can reflect them sometimes. The ionosphere then goes to the next level. There is another level. It's called the E layer at about 110 miles up. And then from 175 miles or so up, we have what's called the F layer. Radio signals can bounce off at varying times and because of various reasons, any one of those layers. Now, obviously, if a radio signal bounces off the D layer and back, it's going to get back very quickly because it's traveling what? Only 80 miles or so up and then back down to Earth. So that would occur, 80 miles. Let's think about that. Speed of light, 186,000 miles per second. Go up to the D layer and down. Well, you probably couldn't even measure it. You could, but it would be, something for the atomic people in Denver or something, in Colorado, rather. All right, so now we know what the speed of light is, and we know how radio, whether it be terrestrial radio or shortwave, gets reflected. The night time comes, the ionosphere begins to reflect these signals, and voila, you're hearing my voice, X number of miles away. All right, with all of that in mind, what I'm about to play for you, what I'm about to demonstrate to you, is a phenomena that's impossible. What you're about to hear is impossible, but it's happening. And it's happened now for years, and it's sporadic, and it's impossible. It's just impossible. And here's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, well, what's called a long-delayed echo, LDE. And there should be no way that a station transmitting a signal would then hear that signal come back to him. Perhaps there would be the rare occurrence where the station would transmit something, and as soon as he let go of his microphone button, he would hear just a little bit of what he said because it had gone all the way around the world. Now, that's very rare on the frequencies that we're operating on, 3840, 3.840, 3840 megahertz. Very rare for that to happen, but one could imagine it might happen. But even if it did happen, and the signal traveled all the way around the world, that would be, roughly 25,000 miles to go around the world. At the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second going around the world is nothing. It would engender perhaps just a very quick type echo, very quick. But what you're about to hear, if you understood everything I just said, should make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. Now, if you go to Google, this, long delayed echoes, if you go to Google and put in long delayed echoes, you will see instances of it occurring. Not very frequently, but it does happen. It is so impossible that you will see legitimate people writing theories about space probes and all kinds of other, plus there's this. The signals sent out are in fact reflected by the ionosphere, and they don't really go through the ionosphere. And even if they did, what would they reflect off of out there? And how would they get back through the ionosphere, which should be reflective on the other side as well? So, in other words, knowing all of that, the first thing you're going to hear is, I can't remember if it's a 4 or a 7 second echo. You're going to have to listen very carefully to the station transmitting. Now, I want you to listen very carefully to what you're going to hear, because this is as strange, as odd, as impossible to explain as anything that ever sailed through the Bermuda Triangle. Listen very carefully, and you will hear, you'll hear this guy's transmission coming back to him. And that's another thing about long delayed echoes, as I pause my finger over the button. For some reason, they seem to come back to the point of origin and are not heard very far from that point of origin. Listen very carefully. This is not possible.
This is KE7BBX/AE, Tumwater, Washington, testing. This is KE7BBX, Tumwater, Washington, testing 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You see, that's not possible, folks. That's simply what you're hearing is not possible. And one might imagine, okay, well, somebody's kidding around with somebody, right? And it's a big hoo-ha. Somebody's out there retransmitting his voice, but that is not the case. This occurred to a friend of mine down in Arizona, and it seems to occur for a period of time, a week, a few days, a week, 2 weeks, and then the phenomena is just gone. It's occurred to me twice in my career, and here it comes again, only this time. There were some precautions taken to make sure that nobody was, fooling around. So listen very carefully.
So if you sat here and you did this, hello, testing. And you went up to 3841 when you did that, it would go. For tradition, it'd be right on frequency when you finish moving your VFO, or 7 seconds after that.
Let me try it. Hold on.
You see what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, it should follow me up. No, if I move up the band and then deep press my key, I should hear it kind of sound like Donald Duck, and then it should catch up with me, right?
Yeah, you should be able to sweep up the dial, not very far, but far enough. And it should just follow you up there. It should be an exact mirror image of what you do.
Okay, let me try it. Hello, testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to do a count. Okay, 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000. That followed me up.
That's mighty weird. I'd sure like to witness it.
So now just one more example, and this one is way over the top. What you're about to hear is a 24-second return. I repeat, a 24-second return. If you do the math, that's about 3 million miles of travel. Impossible.
This is KE7BBX/AE. The time is 5:39. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Utterly, absolutely impossible. And what we need, you see, is for somebody to investigate this. We need some serious investigation into what this could possibly be. On the face of it, the entire thing turns everything we know about physics on its ear. So, you know, we many times talk about things on this program that are strange, unusual, and impossible by the standards that we know. This absolutely is at the top of the list, and we need somebody, I don't know, at the national level, DOD maybe, or NASA, or somebody to look into this, because it just ain't possible. Well, I hope the masses out there understood the impossibility of what you just heard. As hams, we understand the impossibility of it, and certainly don't begin to understand what's going on. I'm telling you, they speculate about probes out there and all the rest. How could the signal, for example, come back to the point of origin after traveling God knows where and for how long, and not hit other points around the point of origin? I mean, it just defies everything we know. Anyway, onward to the world news. More than 100,000 people, there's a very graphic picture up on Drudge of 100,000 people marching past a heavily fortified Republican convention hall on Sunday. You know, years ago, you'd have never read a line like that. Heavily fortified Republican convention hall. Denunciations of the administration and the war in Iraq as delegates flocked to the city to nominate President Bush for another 4. In the White House, Vice President Dick Cheney campaigned his way into the convention about 3 days ahead of time. A powerful car bomb has gone off outside the office of the U.S. security contractor in the Afghan capital of Afghanistan. It killed at least 7, including 2 Americans. Tropical storm Gaston, is it Gaston? I guess, sloshed ashore in South Carolina Sunday near hurricane-force winds, spinning sheets of rain that flooded roads as usual as the storm knocked out power to thousands of people. Another hurricane looks like it's aiming at Florida. We'll see. A California man who once tested, this is incredible, he tested positive for HIV, has learned the diagnosis made all of 8 years ago was a big mistake. He never had the virus that causes AIDS. Jim Malone spent years battling depression and losing weight, expecting to die at any moment. He attended support group meetings, accepted free meals from an AIDS charity. His doctor acknowledged the error in a letter to the Department of Veterans Affairs clinic where Malone was treated. Can you imagine that? You expect to die anytime. You're losing weight. I guess that's the placebo effect in reverse. Huh? You're told you have AIDS, so you begin to lose weight like crazy. The whole thing is crazy. I told you about this last night, in a dramatic reversal of its previous position, the White House this week conceded that emissions of carbon dioxide and other heat-trapping gases were, in fact, the only likely explanation for global warming, citing, quote, best possible scientific information, end quote. An administration official, namely James Mahoney, delivered a report to Congress that essentially reversed the previous White House position set out by George Bush, who had refused to link carbon dioxide emissions to climate change. My goodness, that is quite a reversal. Here's an email from Jeremy, who says, I love the show and so forth. I want to talk about something. The topic is Antarctica. More specifically, Lake Vostok. I haven't heard anything about it for a while now, but in the late 90s and after the millennium, I remember hearing that there were many strange things showing up at Lake Vostok. As I'm sure you're aware, Lake Vostok is an underground lake in Antarctica that is huge. Apparently, in addition to several magnetic anomalies, they have also detected a very large metal structure in this lake. And they've noticed as well the water temperature in the area of the object deep below the surface is as warm as 50 to 60 degrees, which ought not be. Obviously, what I know about this consists of some facts and a lot of rumors, some of which seem to have more inherent veracity than others, but all seem to have something to them. When these anomalies were first noticed, it generated a lot of interest in the scientific community. Then I heard that NSA and intelligence services were up there, and shortly thereafter I heard stories of some scientists and civilians being told to stay away and in fact kicked out. I also heard there were a couple of women who were cross-country skiing across Antarctica that supposedly had seen something after or before being injured and were threatened not to talk about it and were choppered to a base and then out of the continent. I know these days when you hear about Lake Vostok, it is about the core samples that supposedly scientists were made to stop experimenting because they were told they might unleash viruses or organisms that have been secluded from our environment for millions of years that just might in some way be harmful. All I know is there's something fishy, curious, and unknown about what's going on at the bottom of the world. This is an interesting story. It's about a winged cat. Now, I wish I had pulled the photograph and put it on the website for you, but the headline is, Winged Cat from Hell, put to death in central Russia. A winged cat has been killed by villagers near the central Russian city of Kursk. The locals apparently drowned the deformed pussycat after it was, they believe, frankly, it was a messenger of Satan. This comes from Pravda. On entering her yard, this young lady saw how a stray cat stood up and just exactly like a chicken stretched out two wings. She said that at the moment her hair stood straight up on end. The locals had no doubt the unlucky cat was a messenger of the devil, and unfortunately they did away with it. This is not the first time that I've heard rumors of a cat with wings. I wonder about the rest of you. At any rate, it was worthy because they actually were holding the wings up. You know, they had the cat, they were holding the poor dead cat's wings up. You notice how something different is very quickly killed? And so again, I say, if they ever did land, you know, the little green guys, they'd never get to the bottom of the spaceship stairs. They'd be, you know, so full of lead, they'd just collapse about 3 steps down. I'm Art Bell, and I will be right back.
Want to time travel? Go back to past shows on Streamlink. Sign up online at coasttocoastam.com.
So listen to the promise, we hear the night inside, and you see the one side through the grateful blue sky. There won't be no country music, there won't be no rock and roll, when they take away our country, they'll take away our soul.
To talk with Art Bell, call the wildcard line at area code 775-727-1295. The first-time caller line is area code 775-727-1222. To talk with Art Bell from east of the Rockies, call toll-free at 800-825-5033. From west of the Rockies, call 800-618-8255. International callers may reach Art by calling your in-country Sprint access number, pressing option 5, and dialing toll-free 800-893-0903. From coast to coast and worldwide on the internet, this is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell.
Those are the numbers, everybody. In a moment, it's all yours. Incidentally, at the top of the hour, we're going to have Dr. Roger Leir here. And Dr. Leir has overseen or removed any number of implants, possibly alien implants, from human beings. Some kind of implants. In fact, the materials of many of them, when they have been tested, and oh, believe me, they've tested them very carefully, have properties that are very similar to meteorites. So is that whole thing baloney, or is there really something to it? Tonight might be a night for you to find out. Dr. Roger Leir, who wouldn't spend his time and waste his time otherwise, removes these things from human beings. All right, away we go. First time caller line, you are on the air. Hello.
Oh, good evening, Art Bell. Long-time listener. My name is Glenn from Berkshire, Massachusetts.
It's in your voice all the way, my friend. How you doing?
Great. I'm a truck driver, so I'm on a cell phone, so if you
That's all right.
scratchy. What you were talking about Antarctica,
Yes.
the structure there, if you get a chance, ask Sylvia Brown or Ed Danes. So my spiritual teacher says there's a civilization under there, and be real curious to see what they have to say about it.
Well, all right. As a matter of fact, that would be just an absolutely wonderful assignment for Ed Danes and or Sylvia, wouldn't it? I would love to know what's there, if anything. I would love to know if the rumors are true. It is a mysterious place. The Antarctic, very, very mysterious. And so, I don't know how you follow up on this kind of thing. I mean, it is so remote that we have to go on the word of those who have been there or who are there. Speaking of radio, I have talked to people down there, but I would love to go. I have this hankering to go to the Antarctic. My wife thinks I'm out of my mind, but I would love to do it, just to step on the continent. And I understand that a lot of people are doing that, by the way. Vacationers are going down and doing exactly that, sort of the edge of the continent anyway. East of the Rockies, you're on air. Hi.
Hi. Awesome. I'd like to discuss space travel, time travel, and the speed of light.
The speed of light. Yes.
According to Warp Speed 8 Plus, the book, the faster we move through space, the faster we move through time, the faster the speed of light becomes.
Well, that's good theory.
Warp Speed 8 Plus goes into that in depth.
Well, it may, and it's a book and it's opinion, but it's not scientific fact. Right now, we know the speed of light to be the speed of light. I talk to you approximately 186,000 miles per second. That's what we know it to be. And there are people who speculate about exceeding the speed of light, or in some way bending something to apparently exceed the speed of light. But it ain't happened yet. So as far as we know, the laws of physics remain the laws of physics, making what I played for you a little while ago utterly impossible. Absolutely impossible. You heard the impossible. There is no way to explain that. There are theories and there are books, but that doesn't change the basic physics involved. West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello. Hi.
I may not have an explanation for that delay with the radio, but the way you said, how far it's traveled, it's like when you get a thunderstorm and you got a well-grounded antenna, you get that kind of blue orb over it.
Yes.
Maybe when the guy's charging that antenna, it's not really going anywhere. It's like a static charge that's somehow just kind of hovering right around that antenna. And after a set amount of time, it just kind of bleeds back in. And that's why that's the only radio that'll pick it up.
We're talking about two distinctly different things here. A thunderstorm and grounded antennas and the plasma ball that is above them, and then these long delayed echoes are something else entirely, completely. Two interesting but very separate subjects. The first is understandable, the discharge of the field allowing the bolt not to hit the tower. That's understandable, at least. What I've laid out in front of you tonight, in terms of proof, audio recordings, and another friend of mine down in Arizona had the same thing going on, and he was kind of going crazy. I mean, I can hear this, but nobody else can hear it. My own signal coming back to me second rate in the radio, letting go of the microphone, hearing the return signal. So he went so far as to videotape the whole affair. No, there's no question about this. This is real. This is as real as a heart attack, folks. And it utterly turns physics on its ear, and it demands an explanation, absolutely demands an explanation. And yet none are forthcoming. Only pretty wild guesses made by otherwise sane people about things like space probes and so forth. International line, you're on the air. Hello. Hi. What is your first name?
My name is Kerry.
Okay, Kerry, what's up?
Actually, I'm curious about the comments that were made about the Lake Vostok in Antarctica.
Yes.
I'm just wondering where exactly that is located. Is it near the Russian, what used to be called the Vostok Research?
My understanding is it is near the Russian station, yes.
Because I'm looking at a relatively recent map of Antarctica, and Vostok seems to have disappeared. I see Soviet sky yacht and Soyuz, but I don't see Vostok.
Well, Lake Vostok is most assuredly there.
Oh, I'm just wondering why they would have changed the name of the station, because Vostok was there.
I have no idea. The whole thing down there is pretty mysterious. There is something mysterious going on. I've had too many different reports from too many different sources not to understand there's something going on.
I used to work for PICO, the Polar Ice Coring Office in Alaska, which is a contract office with the National Science Foundation.
Yes.
I was their chief engineer, and I schooled in Greenland and Antarctica.
And the way you described a large metallic object down there, it sounds like perhaps it's something that's using the ice cap and the heat sink in creating this lake.
I don't know. I have no idea, sir, but it certainly is intriguing, isn't it?
It is indeed.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Cheerio.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
You know the ABC interview that you guys did with Peter Jennings, did you do that?
Yes, there's going to be a special, it is my understanding, in February of 2005 on ABC.
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Also, I was wondering if you'd like to invite Kevin Costner on as a guest, being that all the stuff a lot of things he's done is similar to what you talk about on the show. And then one last point.
Believe me, Kevin can come on anytime he wants.
Hear that, Kev? Cool. Also, the first experiment you did, if I'm not mistaken, it was like kind of, the UFO thing over Phoenix happened 2 weeks later. And I thought I remember that experiment being to, maybe kind of make contact or something.
That's right.
Maybe that's
Actually, the experiment was to have them show themselves.
Right.
Now, there was a couple of weeks, so you could say, well, it was a couple of weeks. I don't know if that's close enough to connect it. Pretty darn close, though, huh?
Yeah, but also the fact that they postponed talking about it for 10 months or whatever it was on the
That
news.
was so weird.
That might have been because you actually had a successful experiment, and it would have been more obvious to a lot more people otherwise. Thanks a lot. Love your show.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Yes, he's quite correct. About 2 weeks prior to the major occurrence in Arizona, we did, and that was back during the time that I was doing these mind experiments, and that was one of the early on ones. And so you could either connect it or not. I chose, because there was a 2-week interval, not to necessarily connect it, but looking back on it, timeline-wise, why maybe. East of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello.
Hi, Art.
Hi.
My name's Joe. We're in Zanesville, Ohio.
All right.
And I'm listening to you on WHAS out of Louisville because we don't have a local outlet here for you.
A perfect example of how radio signals bounce off the ionosphere
There you go.
and get to people like you.
Yes, now, we had this happen to us.
First of all, turn the radio off, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. I should know better than that.
I'm going to push the button on that and remove your call because people could track you down having that call. So
Yeah, okay. I understand. No problem. And another friend of mine who's another ham.
Anyway, you're a ham operator.
Right.
Yeah. Yes. So you had this happen?
We had this happen. We were on 3805.
Mm-hmm.
We were waiting for a friend of mine who is mobile over in going to Philadelphia.
Yes.
And this was about 1 o'clock in the morning. No problem here in February. I called him, and all of a sudden I'm hearing very, very weak, down in the noise, exactly what I said.
Yeah.
And
How many seconds would you estimate later?
well, I would say, it's hard to tell. By the time I let off the key and listened for his response, I would say a couple of seconds. And all of a sudden, I'm hearing me
Mm-hmm.
down
All
in
right.
the noise.
Well, you have to remember the measured delay would be to the very end of whatever you heard.
Right.
So that would be many seconds, and that's impossible.
Well, we just looked at each other and said, ain't no way.
Yeah.
Did you hear what I heard?
Yeah.
And he looked at me and said, do that again. Well, I thought, well, maybe somebody's playing with us here.
Yeah, that's always everybody's first thought.
And I thought, wait a minute, no. And we did this again.
Right.
Only this time, it wasn't as clear as the first time.
Right. Doesn't matter. The phenomenon, ladies and gentlemen, is real. This is not somebody screwing around. We've proven that a million different ways. The phenomenon is real. I'm totally satisfied. Intellectually, scientifically, it's a real phenomenon. It's not somebody screwing around. That's not to say nobody's ever messed around with this kind of thing and played jokes. But that issue aside, we know it's real. What we don't know is how it can possibly be. It is as strange and as inexplicable a phenomenon, is so inexplicable that, well, maybe our government does know something. Maybe they do know what's going on, but I don't. I mean, that would be a many, many million-mile trip, so many million miles that it's not even plausible. It breaks all the rules. West of the Rockies, you're on air. Hi.
Art?
Yes.
Oh, hey, I've been listening to you when I was in junior high, and I'm about 21 now, and I have a question about some kind of implant that I think I may have
Really?
had. This occurred actually last week, and I thought about you recently when I had this problem.
Why would you think you have an implant?
Well, I don't anymore, so that's the problem. And I think there's something bad going on. I've had this red dot type of thing that's been on my lip ever since, I don't know, junior high and high school. And I would rub my hand over it, and it would be flush with the rest of my skin. But there was something in there. And I knew, but I just never played with it. But one night, last week, I was playing with it, and I scratched off the surface. And there was something that was in there, and I could feel it. And the next morning when I was driving to work, I wasn't even thinking about it. I was so tired. And I put my hand on my lip, and it came out. And it was like silicone packing beads. It was like this little hard bead that came out, and I thought it was like, organic, so I tried to smash it.
Like a packing bead, you said. Didn't your mama tell you not to be chewing on boxes?
Yeah. Well,
Okay, anyway, go ahead.
See, the funny thing about this was I don't really recall exactly what point in my life I started noticing it, but I just remember noticing a lot in high school. And I was like, hey, when did I get that? But so it comes out, and I didn't think about it, and I'm on my way to work. I'm rushing, so I just let it go in my truck, and I didn't even think to go back and look at it because you guys were talking about what it might be made of. So I gotta go look for it, I guess. But it was so small, and so now I've never the other day I was thinking about this. I don't recall in my growing up at least probably 6 years old and up, I don't remember having a nosebleed in my entire life. I must have had one when I was really young or something, because I don't remember. But since last Thursday, and up until now, I've been having frequent random nosebleeds. Ever since I took whatever that was out, and I'm in the military, so I'm not going to go ask one of my dogs, hey, I pulled this out and I think it might be something alien, because they'll think I'm crazy,
They might. They might. And
I was just wondering if you've heard anything about some similar case or something like that.
nothing like you just said. No, I ripped off a piece of my lip with super glue. That's about as close as it gets. I don't know what to tell you. If it's already out, then it's out. And I don't know how you're going to relate the nosebleeds to it. Maybe it was something, maybe it was nothing. Tonight we will explore the kind of thing he was talking about in much more depth. And there have been things removed from human beings. What are they? I don't think we'll get those answers tonight, but if you want to learn whether they really might be something other than earthly, you're going to want to listen. You're on the air, Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. Where are you, please? Toronto. Welcome.
Thank you.
What's up?
Yeah, a few things. There was a few years ago, missing town, and I was watching my boat news.
A missing town.
Yeah, is this Art Bell?
Yes.
Oh, wow, okay. The delay confused me. Wow, it's
That's why you're supposed to turn your radio off.
Yes. But I couldn't hear. The phone's quiet?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, there was, I was watching some news channel called World News, and there's some small town in your country that went missing entire town.
I vaguely recall something.
You do?
Yeah, sure.
Wow. So I was just wondering if I just called to let you know that. And they had police that had closed off the area. There was
Well, I don't think
train station.
yeah, the whole town was not necessarily. If I recall correctly, all the people were gone.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Mysteriously gone, right?
Yeah, and there was a park with children's bicycles laying down on the curb.
Yes.
There was a laundromat with clothes full but no people. There was a train station and people just walked into the seats but no people. And I just thought anyone had heard that, the updates on that. Also, years back you had on a guest, a Russian defector.
Yes.
Remember that, man? And there was you spoke of a bill that Bill Clinton put through to in case of supposedly an accidental nuclear strike, that America would not retaliate immediately.
Yes.
And I was just wondering if anybody heard an update on that.
Yes, it was, thank you. No, not really. It was our first strike policy turned on its ear, suggesting that we might not strike first. Now, hopefully we still have that policy because that is, in my opinion, what creates deterrence. If you know what's going to happen to you, you think 2 or 3 times before you do it. Now, with regard to the long-delayed echoes, anybody who has any input, please get it to me. I would be artbell@mindspring.com or artbell@aol.com. If you have any answers to the unanswerable so far, I certainly would, and so many others would appreciate the input as well, and we'll be sure you hear about it. We're going to be talking to Dr. Roger Leir about implants coming up in just a moment. This is Coast to Coast AM.
Get it in writing with the After Dark newsletter. Subscribe by calling 1-888-727-5505.
KE7BBX/AE, Tumwater, Washington, testing. This is KE7BBX, Tumwater, Washington, testing 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll take a ride? To talk with Art Bell, call the wildcard line at area code 775-727-1295. The first-time caller line is area code 775-727-1222. To talk with Art Bell from East to the Rockies, call toll-free 800-825-5033. From West to the Rockies, call 800-618-8255. International callers may reach Art by calling your in-country Sprint access number, pressing option 5, and dialing toll-free 800-893-0903. From coast to coast and worldwide on the internet, this is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell.
It is indeed. Good morning, everybody. How are you? It is going to get very strange tonight. Appropriate, I guess. We have a big full moon out there. Have you seen it? Dr. Roger Leir, author of Aliens and the Scalpel, has been said to have been one of the world's most important leaders in physical evidence research involving ufology. He and his surgical team have performed 9 surgeries on alleged alien implants abductees. This resulted in the removal of 10 separate and distinct objects suspected of being alien implants. These objects have been scientifically investigated by some of the most prestigious labs in the world. Their findings have been baffling, and some comparisons have been made to meteorite samples. Dr. Leir anticipates performing more surgeries in the future and will investigate the physiological and biological aspects of the abduction phenomenon. He has also formed a non-profit organization for this exact purpose called ANS Research, Inc. In a moment, Dr. Roger Leir. Dr. Leir is a podiatrist, right, Doctor?
That's correct, sir.
How does a podiatrist get from doing stuff with feet to taking out possible alien implants?
Oh, it's simple. All you do is just stick your head out about a mile and wait for the chopping block to cut it off. Now, most of the things I've done, quite curiously, have been through a group of synchronistic events. The first one I got into was as a challenge because I was shown an X-ray of a foot that had a couple of objects in it, and they touted this as being an alien implant, and I walked away chuckling.
I'm sure. I mean, people, for one thing, they get a lot of things in their feet. I mean, they step on all kinds of things.
That's it, exactly. And of course, at that time, I'd been in practice about 30-some odd years and have removed almost everything from metal to glass to hair to whatever, coral, all sorts of things. Even once a super secret piece of metal, which I had a couple of fellows with suits in the operating room who took it and ran.
Oh, really? No kidding.
Yeah, I found out in later years it was metal that was being machined for rocket valves.
Yeah, he stepped on it or something?
Yeah, he stepped on it, or no, I think it shot out of a machine and penetrated the shoe. That's what it was.
All right. Well, however, and so it was such a secret metal that they had guys in suits there waiting.
Yes, they did. We hope to get it out, Doc, but we want it.
If not, we're going to have to kill him.
And take you too, probably.
Yeah, that's right.
It was pretty exciting, and of course, I didn't know what it was.
Were you advised not to speak of what you had just done?
No, they never said a word as long as they got the metal.
I see.
And, of course, they wouldn't tell me then what it was.
How long ago was this? How long ago?
Back in the late 60s.
Weird. All right. So anyway, somehow you got interested in ufology. I mean, you must have, obviously, you became interested in ufology before you got to the, hey, let's cut this open and see what's in there.
Oh, yes, I did. I'm, one of the older generation. So I remember my father coming into our kitchen and throwing the newspaper down on the table and reading the headline to my mother, U.S. Army Air Force captures flying saucer.
Oh, Roswell.
Yes, and then he went on a long dissertation telling her that, you see, honey, I told you we're not the only living creatures in the vastness of this universe. And he was a bit irate when, after a day or so, he read the headline that said it wasn't a saucer, it was a balloon. He was one of these old-fashioned people, Art, that thought, if whatever you did, if you were professional and you would be an expert in whatever you do, if it was radio, then you better know everything about radio.
Sure.
So as far as he was concerned, the simplicity of it was the Army Air Force was that was the end. That was the last word. And I remember him saying to my mother in a very irritated voice, you mean they don't know the difference between a saucer and a balloon? So
yes.
that's done with me.
Well, that's kind of like when I had my, that triangle 150 feet above me, and then Nellis Air Force Base releases this thing, says it was a C-130. It's downright embarrassing.
Yeah, I mean, they could have even made it worse. They could have said it was something like a Kirby vacuum cleaner or something. I mean, we've heard it all through the years, Art.
Okay, well, I guess that could do it for you. But how, still, the level of interest to get to the point where you're cutting people open looking for stuff, has got to be a lot of notches beyond that talking about Roswell.
Oh, yeah. Well, the years, went by, and I went through school and got my professional degree, and then I got interested in flying and astronomy, and I got a pilot's license. Got multi-engine rated and went through the whole thing. So I sort of always was interested in aviation and astronomical things. And
then a friend of mine asked me if I wanted to go to a MUFON meeting, and I said, "Is that something to do with food, or what exactly is that?" He said, "No, Mutual UFO Network." And I said, "What do they do?" He said, "Well, it's something to do with UFOs." So I went, and it was a very interesting presentation. And besides that, they had free cookies that were homemade. So the meeting was great. To make a long story short, I joined, later became an investigative reporter for a periodical called The Vortex. And in doing so, I would attend various lectures and conferences and critique the individuals that were speaking my own voice. Some liked it and some didn't. But anyway, it was at one of these conferences where I was exposed to this X-ray. And I just simply said, "Well, if you think these are alien implants, why don't you take them out and see what they are?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I'd like to get this done, but, the patient doesn't have any money and she can't afford medical insurance." So I said, "Where does she live?" And he said, "Texas." And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, you get her to California and I'll do the surgery free."
Where was the alleged UFO artifact, I guess, or implant, whatever? Where was it?
The first one was in the great toe of the left foot. There was two of them, one on each side. And the second case, which we did at the same time with a general surgeon colleague of mine, was in the back of the hand.
The back of the hand. All right. In either one of these cases, did you remove anything that you consider anomalous at all?
Oh, did I? No, to me it was going to be a routine foreign body removal under a local anesthetic. It was a very simple procedure. And so we administered all in the way that I'd done it many times before. And suddenly I touched something, and the patient reacted by ripping her foot out of my hands and up into the air with violent pain. And this was a rather unusual reaction. There's plenty of anesthesia.
How deep was this subject?
Well, it was deeper than we thought it was, too. It was almost adjacent to one of the bones.
Really? Well, by then she'd probably been not real happy anyway if you're down that deep.
No, so we put in some more anesthetic and more follow. But then when we finally got it out, it was like I said, I had done, at that time, probably 1,000 more foreign body extractions. But this is the weirdest thing I ever saw. It was a T-shaped affair, about a centimeter in each direction.
A centimeter.
The centimeter is 2.54 centimeters in an inch, so that's about a half an inch.
Oh, that's pretty good size.
Yeah, pretty good size for a big toe.
Yeah, absolutely.
And covered with this weird, strange, dark gray, shiny membrane.
Now, here's where we're going to spend a little bit of time. This membrane you're talking about, it's pretty weird. We've talked about it before, and I want to lay it out for everybody again. But is it the kind of membrane that you would see growing on since you've removed so many other objects from feet before, do they have this kind of membrane?
Very simple answer, and that is absolutely not.
Not. All right, so this is some kind of anomalous membrane. I assume it's been under microscopes, maybe electron microscopes, all kinds of things, right?
Right. We've done a lot of things, but the most peculiar thing about this issue, here there's two surgeons in a room full of people on a live feed going out to a television set in the waiting room and 5 witnesses and so on. And we take a knife and try a surgical blade and try and cut this thing open. It won't cut.
It won't.
No, you can't cut through it. And surgical blades are pretty sharp. You can even whittle the bone but you couldn't cut sufficiently.
What could possibly be that hard? Well, metal.
Yeah, that could like metal, but yet they look like organic tissue.
But you were getting through the membrane.
No, we weren't getting through it at all.
Not even through the membrane.
No, you couldn't cut through this biological tissue, which was very, very strange. So here you got a patient, you know, with an open wound on a table. You can't spend all day fiddling with the thing that you just took out.
Right.
So we naturally closed up the wound, cleaned it out, closed it up, went to the other side. So then on that side, we moved this little.
No, wait a minute. You did not get the first object out? You had to
No, we got it out.
You got it out.
We got it out, but this covering, you wanted to see what was inside.
Right.
And we couldn't cut through it, so we just set it aside.
Okay. And now you're on to the other side.
Went on to the other side, and took out a little cantaloupe seed-shaped affair, which was covered with the same weird-looking tissue. We tried to cut through that one, too. We couldn't do that one either.
All right. Well, if I remember high school biology correctly, if a foreign object gets in your body, the white cells think of it as the enemy, right? And it goes through some sort of rejection procedure, and the body attacks it in some way. Is that right?
You got it right. It's very, very simple. It's either an acute or a chronic inflammatory reaction. And the white cells are definitely involved. They migrate to the area and they try and remove it. And if it's the wrong kind of stuff, they don't remove it, but they'll wall it off with what we call an inclusion system, or a foreign body inclusion system, which is fibrous tissue, you know, like shrapnel that's been in a wound for 100 years.
Okay, but you're convinced that what you encountered that we're talking about could not possibly have been that?
No, it was not.
Okay. Do you imagine that fibrous growth occurred after the object entered the person, or was post that point?
Well, we didn't have any fibrous growth at all. This was a very smooth, well-organized, shiny sort of tissue that was clinging onto a piece of metal inside. And the surrounding tissues, and we've removed some of that too, so we sent it in for some pathology. They were, certainly looked pretty much normal. So that was another, very unusual finding. We didn't find any fibrous tissue, and there was none in the path reports either. In fact, one of the findings that was so shocking was that there was no inflammatory reaction at all.
That would imply the body was accepting it for whatever reason.
Yes, and of course now, after I've done a number of these things, and actually we've gone on since you got that statistical data, we've done 12 cases now, removed 13 objects, submitted them all for very stringent analysis.
How many of the objects, the 13 you say?
Well, we've got 13 objects out of 12 surgeries.
Do all 13 of them exhibit that same kind of growth?
One did not, because it was a very expensive piece of Botham glass.
Oh, fine. So 12 out of 13.
12 out of 13 had scientific interest. 3 of these 12 were different. They were little grayish-white balls about the size of EB. But they did also, surrounding tissue, there was no inflammatory response. And then one of these objects we removed was all biological, and like the one in Whitley's ear, with moves underneath the skin when you touched it.
That one, that whole story still stares, it just stands here up in the back of my head. Honestly, it does. I mean, when Whitley said the scalpel touched the object and the doctor said the object moved away from him, that honestly freaks me out. Do you have any idea how one of these objects might have power or ability to move?
Only a suspicion. The one that we removed from the arm would move in a circle with about a 2.5-inch diameter when you touch the skin outside.
Yeah.
And then if you played around with it and it liked you, and I had all of this on video, of course.
Excuse me, did you say if it liked you?
Yeah, it seemed like it liked your finger. It would follow your finger around like a puppy dog. But when you're talking about using treat, this is my field. That's what I do. I even watched this video.
It follows you around like a puppy dog. Do you realize how that sounds?
I know, it's weird. It's weird.
Yeah, there's some weird things going on in the world, all right. I documented one of those, and a lot of things we flat don't have answers for. And the mainstream community, the science community, the press, they won't talk about these things. They just won't talk about them.
No, and some of the biggest enemies that we have are within the field of ufology itself. Now, I try to be different because I try to use, organized academic science to either illustrate what we have, prove it or disprove it.
Right.
And if it's not something unusual, you're going to hear it from me because I'm going to tell you about it.
Yeah, you're pretty plain spoken. I mean, if it's a hunk of glass you take out, then that's what it is. But are you convinced, Doctor, that some percentage of what you've removed really are alien artifacts? Is that what you believe they are?
Well, I don't like to use the word alien, except for the fact that we can definitely say they are alien to the human body. But they certainly represent a technology which is not terrestrial technology. And one of the things we found by doing extensive metallurgy is these metals in these things contain non-terrestrial isotopic ratios.
Yeah, that's a very important statement. We're going to cover that in quite a bit of detail. But back up from that for a second. You said we're sure they're not terrestrial in origin. Are you sure that in some lab somewhere, I mean, God knows the government is doing some pretty weird stuff with this two guys you had in your office, right? Right. So they're doing even weirder stuff than that. So who's to say that some of what you're running into might not have come from, I don't know, some government secret lab somewhere?
Well, let's look at the practicality of the situation. We all know. You can go to Oak Ridge Labs and you can buy any cockamamie isotope you want to get if you got the money to pay for it.
Right.
So, you can get 10 non-terrestrial isotopes, and you can pay the gas.
You probably should have told the audience that announcement was going to do it.
Well, I haven't heard the rest yet. You got to put them together.
Well,
that's the problem.
Okay.
Now, the other thing is, because I've been in this a while, and Whitley will attest to this too, because he was responsible for getting me into these places. A couple of these places were black budget laboratories. I mean, that's what they do. They do the secret stuff. And here we have a number of guys who are crowded into the room looking for my material, with the lab director standing out in the hall wringing his hands. Not a happy scene, and they're not happy with me or the scientist that got my material in there. And I was able to find things out that black budget guys don't understand. All right, the stuff they're looking at.
All right, hold it right there. Well, okay, no doubt. But then maybe there's other things they do or I can't talk about. I'm Art Beldis, Coast to Coast AM. My guest is Dr. Roger Leir, and we're talking implants. Do you have one?
Want to take a ride? 2 talk with Art Bell, call the wildcard line at area code 775-727-1295. The first-time caller line is area code 775-727-1222. To talk with Art Bell from East to the Rockies, call toll-free 800-825-5033. From West to the Rockies, call 800-618-8255. International callers may recharge by calling your in-country Sprint access number, pressing option 5, and dialing toll-free 800-893-0903. From coast to coast and worldwide on the internet, this is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell.
Apparently, sometimes when you ride, you come back with a souvenir. And the man who deals in that would be Dr. Roger Lear. He's our guest. He'll be right back. Dr. Lear, this growth, this thing that grows over these implants or whatever they are, is it something, in your opinion, the body produced in reflex to this object appearing? Is it something that you believe is a living part of the object itself, or another way, is it a living biological entity that you're removing?
I believe that the coating is a living biological entity, but is not grown in situ in the body. I believe that it appears that this metal is encapsulated in this stuff, and then it's evidently put in. But there are many mysteries here. Some of them we haven't even touched yet. None of these cases have any scar. There's no portal of entry that's visible. So, how did they get in there in the first place?
Really a good question. Really a good question.
Well, there are many facets. What we've covered is just, some of this is more simplistic portions of it.
All right, well, I want to understand as best I can. In analysis, you're telling me they've come up with similarities to the content of meteorites. How similar, how striking is it in analysis?
Looking at the SEM scanning electron microscopy and looking at the ratio of elements in the object, we find that they are pretty similar to meteorites, except the nickel-iron ratio is wrong. So, although they may be similar, they are in some aspects dissimilar.
Nickel is one prime thing they look for, is it not, in determining the nickel content and determining if we've got a meteorite on our hands or not.
Exactly, and there's a certain ratio to nickel to iron that must be to determine if it is or doesn't be a meteorite. It's usually pretty specific across the board. Also, I'm looking at isotopic ratios and things. When things are mined here on Earth, the isotopic ratios are relatively the same, about 2%, but looking at stuff that comes from elsewhere, asteroids we've brought back from the moon, or Martian samples and so on, the isotopic ratios can be extremely different.
Doctor, is it your view that when you remove these, whatever they are, that their function, whatever it was, stops?
Yes, one of the things that we find, for example, is the magnetic properties. They vary they have a varying magnetic field, depending upon the person and the object, varying from about 3 to 6 milligauss.
Above normal background?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Now, where is that measured? Is that measured while it's still in the person or after you've pulled it out?
No, it's measured while it's still in the person. We use a Gauss meter, amongst other things. We've used a frequency detector, a Gauss meter.
Well, that's incredible. Already that's incredible. Electromagnetic radiation coming from them. How above background, how much above background is that? And in how many cases did you detect that kind of radiation?
Well, in the 12 cases, we've got, I think, 8 that have this kind of electromagnetic radiation. 2 of them we actually were able to calibrate alternating radio frequencies. And don't ask me what they are because, to tell you the truth, I don't remember.
Oh my God. I mean, this is really important stuff. Now, of course, I want to ask you what they were. I have 2 alternating frequencies of radio transmission of some sort. Do you remember even in what range?
Yeah, they were in the FM band. And
FM band.
Yeah, I would remember that it would stay on one frequency for a fixed short amount of time and then pop up to another one and stay on that one and then pop back to the first one.
How were you looking at that, Doctor? I mean, did somebody have a spectrum analyzer?
Yeah, we had a spectrum analyzer and a radio frequency detector, and we took the patient out in an empty field and drew a circle, and then took the instrument and placed one of the members of the team out in the middle of the circle, and we walked 360 degrees, pointing the antenna horizontally to see what frequency would walk on.
When did you do this? When? Yes.
The surgery that we did in November of last year was one, and then we did...
These RF measurements, when?
Yeah, in November of last year.
Oh, I would love to have been in on that. And I'd love to be, if you get something to that point again, I'm pretty good in that area. I would like to have something to do with it.
All right, the next one will do. I'll give you a call.
Please. That's incredible. And
I do have these frequencies, Art. It's just that I don't remember all the numbers.
Do you remember anything about the mode of the emission? I mean, was it just a carrier? Was it a modulated signal of some sort? Was it? Do you remember anything about it?
No. I have no expertise in the field of radio. I was just shocked that there was something coming out.
I should say. You should say. And the FM band is a weird place for it. Of course, you can hear this. Wow. That's
well, you know, I talk to certain radio engineers, and they say that doesn't necessarily mean that you're really getting an emanation from that particular object in the body, because you're telling me it could be something like a radio relay where you're getting a signal bounced off of it, and it's looking at the source, but it may not be the source.
Well, right. It may not even be. It could be a spurt, for example. You may not even be looking at the main frequency, but just because you're very nearby, a product coming from it, which would appear perhaps on many frequencies. So,
you know, or I suppose it mentions something that could be a harmonic too.
Yep. So that's pretty strange, all right.
And the last one I think was 2.5 to 3 milligauss. Gauss meter scale on which the scale pegs at 6 milligauss.
Wow. So
then we take these things out, we don't get anything. And this last object was so highly magnetic. The instruments that we use during surgery, they're made by the surgical manufacturing company to not be dangerous, and so they don't easily get magnetized. So when we took this thing out and put it into the container, the instrument that I used, the clamp to take it out with, was already magnetized. And all I did was took another instrument called a mosquito.
That is a very large magnetic field to achieve that.
Yeah, and we pick it up, and then we put it transferred into the final container with sort of a serum solution in it, and that instrument becomes magnetized. That's pretty magnetic.
But good Lord, Doctor, if all you're telling me is true, this should be headline material. I mean, real headline material.
Well, I think you're right, and I get asked this all the time. But when you read in the newspapers, Kerry's war records.
Yeah, I know.
I haven't finished. To really intrigue you, when we do X-ray diffraction on the naturally the object contains iron because of its magnetic properties. You would expect that. So when we do X-ray diffraction on the iron, we find that the iron is amorphous.
Meaning?
Meaning that it has no crystalline form. Right? Now, I was able to find out, and I don't mind talking about this to an audience on the radio these days, but we have some secret technology that knows how to make amorphous metals, but don't ask me what to use it for. But what they're amazed at is how do you make amorphous iron magnetic? That's not within our purview.
What do I use it for?
I don't know. You tell me that.
But you're sure that we really do
Yeah, we know they gave that up. We do know how to make it, and they even explained the process was just highly technical, and I didn't even understand it all. So they told it to the right person.
Just out of curiosity, Doctor, what percentage of the objects that you have removed have come from people who have claimed abduction?
Well, that's part of the study. They go through a long sort of assisting period before we determine they're going to become a surgical candidate. And that's primary. They have to have some conscious memory indicating they may have had an abduction. We don't allow anybody to undergo regressive hypnosis just because we don't want the criticism to say we put ideas in their heads. So they got to have some pure conscious memory. After the surgery's done, if they want to, some people don't want to. If they want to undergo hypnosis, we can provide them with individuals who are qualified to do this.
Oh, that's very interesting. So you will not do hypnotherapy prior to removing the object or interviewing that person prior to removing the object. No hypnotherapy allowed, just afterwards.
That's correct. And some of the cases I've done with, one of the foremost authorities in this field, Bud Hopkins, and we've done them afterwards, not before.
Well, what is it generally thought to be with regard to the delineation between those who have been abducted and remember it consciously and those who don't?
I didn't understand the question.
Well, in other words, how many people are thought to be abducted and with no conscious memory of it, do you think, versus those who have a conscious memory? I would think the ratio would be very high, and that there'd be many more who wouldn't have any memory at all of the abduction.
Oh, you're right, because assuming the phenomena is real, which we can theorize at this point, since it's worldwide, involves millions of people.
That was a question.
Most people go through life, they don't know what happened. They may have indications of having a few quote-unquote strange dreams, but they get adjusted to it, rationalize things around, and go about their business. A much smaller amount are bothered by it and have some kind of conscious memories, which may result in phobias and fears and alcoholism and drug addiction and other works of compensation. And they are definitely bothered by it.
I would think. So I guess people are just guessing when they're guessing at how many millions might have been abducted, might have implants right now.
Yeah, if you look at the Roper poll, I guess we can get some conservative U.S. statistic at about between 1 and 2% of the population. And I say conservative because the amount of people who answer those questions, what makes the pollster think they're going to answer them in a frank and open mind. So that's probably a very conservative figure. And then I feel about 15% maybe of those might have a detectable object in their body. Now I get emails still, I did the first case in 95, it's almost 2005, and I still get about 300 emails a week, but it's only a small percentage of these who are really involved.
What are you doing these days when you get an email from somebody who says, look, I was abducted, I have something, and I would like to get an operation? I mean, you must get some number of those. Do you still follow up?
Sure, we follow up. You say you got something in you, well, send me a CAT scan, an X-ray, or an MRI, and let me see it. No X-ray, negative X-ray, or no X-ray, no CAT scan, no MRI, and better go elsewhere.
Let's, for a second, discuss, because that's all we can do, and speculate about what you think these things might be, what might be their purpose. What is your best guess?
No, that's all it is. It's a best guess.
Understood.
And, you know, I hear all kinds of things. And one of the things I've done is an offshoot from this research, and it's based on talking about my own family. I have a young daughter who's now 13, and watching her grow up in comparison to my older kid, she's not the same kid. So it got me looking at kids today. So I started looking at some statistical comparisons on growth characteristics. And I took 17 functional growth characteristics over a 40-year period, 1947 to 1987. Right. And 47 has absolutely nothing to do with Roswell. It just happened to be that the books that I was using were printed in 1947, and the next set of statistics wasn't available until 87. These are worldwide, and we found, I'll give you an example, saying things like when the child raises their head, when they can climb stairs, when they can stand, when they can talk, simple sentences. We found overall those statistics have been accelerated by 16, that's 1/6 to 80%. And it don't make any difference whether it's in China or Israel or Russia or the U.S. or Brazil. And speaking of Brazil, there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we're going to get to Brazil, but are you're suggesting that we've got a brighter bunch on our hands?
Not only brighter, but
accelerated.
Part of it.
Accelerated.
Yeah, accelerated. Well, I'll give you an example. My daughter, for example, when she was about 10 years old, would walk out the front door, and we had a tree there that would collect all these tiny little Tweety birds. And she would walk out, and they would do their thing and sing and whatever. And I would walk out the door, they would go in a million directions. And she would say things like reaching into some pool of universal knowledge and having a plum rolled off her tongue. Well, then I began to look at kids in general and talking to parents and having them write me letters and traveling about the world as I have in the last 4 or 5 years, talking to parents and grandparents. It was not just my daughter. It seemed to be pretty much a general rule for kids born, within the last 30, 40 years. We're showing these characteristics. And then looking at the literature, we're reading books about star children, millennium children.
Yeah, it's not bring up star children and indigo and all the rest of it.
Yeah, it's just different reasons for describing the same thing.
Or, Doctor, do you think we're being assimilated?
Well, I think we're being manipulated genetically. If you look at the abduction program, I mean, you got to admit, most of the stories are involving ova and sperm.
So then, perhaps implants are the end part or the latter part of larger genetic experimentation that's going on. After all, most of these abduction stories have significant sexual or reproductive content to them, don't they?
That's what I like about you, Art. You're a thinker.
Yes.
Well, so you asked me, what are these things for? If that's what's going on, then I believe these are sort of genetic monitoring devices. Do we do anything different? I mean, what percentage of whales and bears do we have to tag before we find out the information that we want to know? You don't have to tag them all.
And what do we tag them with? Little radio transmitters.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't certainly have to abduct every individual all over the planet, because what are they going to do? They're going to interbreed. And so if you want to change a race of beings, what better way to do it?
Change a race of beings. That's a godlike thing to do, change a race of beings, isn't it? Okay, hold on, Doctor. We're at the top of the hour. How about you? Do you have one of these things in you? Have you suspected that you do? Are they trying to change us, assimilate us? War time, folks. Dr. Roger Leir is my guest, and this is Coast to Coast AM.
Go back to past shows on Streamlink. Sign up online at coasttocoastam.com.
He's got this dream about finding some man who's gonna give up the blues and the one-night scams and never settle down. Quiet little go
To talk with Art Bell, call the wildcard line at area code 775-727-1295. The first-time caller line is area code 775-727-1222. To talk with Art Bell from East of the Rockies, call toll-free at 800-825-5033. From West of the Rockies, call Art at 800-618-8255. International callers may reach Art Bell by calling your in-country Sprint access number, pressing option 5, and dialing toll-free 800-893-0903. From coast to coast and worldwide on the internet, this is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell.
And if you've listened carefully so far tonight, and you're not thinking really hard about all you've heard, then there's not much hope for you. Dr. Roger Leir is here, and what he's told us so far about these implants is incredible. I mean, totally over the top, incredible. And we're not done, because we're about to tell you what's just happened, relatively just happened, in South America, in Brazil, the equivalent of our Roswell, perhaps. Coming up in a moment. All right, Dr. Leir, we're about to talk about South America, but just before we do that, Curtis in San Diego has a pretty good question, fast lasting. He says, can you ask Dr. Tees if they did any DNA testing on the material encapsulating the metal objects?
No. We'd love to, but I'm a 501c3 nonprofit. We operate by donations and grants and the sale of some of the educational materials. And
how expensive is DNA testing?
It's pretty expensive. So it's very difficult to get the volunteers to come along and volunteer a DNA lab.
Yeah, I guess it's a lot of money. But God, it just doesn't. I mean, something of this magnitude. It seems like we ought to find the money somewhere. I mean, you and I both know people of money who would probably kick in to get this done.
Well, if there's anybody out there listening, or we know anybody, just contact me and we'll do it. I certainly know the laboratories to get it done.
Well, what about NIDS?
Well, I approached NIDS several times on DNA studies and talked to Bob himself. Couldn't get him off the dime.
That's quite remarkable. I would imagine Bob to have intense interest in. I mean, that answers part of the question, right?
Well, you got to remember that Bob financed a huge, most expensive DNA study that's ever been done on one of my specimens from an implant case. And it was quite a scientific endeavor. It probably is the most in-depth study ever done on DNA in any anything involved in the UFO field.
All right, let's talk about Brazil. Relatively, in the relative recent past, 1996, I guess something happened in Brazil, and some Americans have sort of heard about it in the periphery. It's been discussed a few times on the show by some different people, but if you could update us all, please. What happened? Where was it in Brazil, and what happened?
It happened, the event that happened is very similar to what happened here, or what we believe happened in Roswell in July of 1947. And with the crash of evidently some strange craft, and instead of bodies being reported as were with Roswell, there was actual beings that were seen around town. Now, this occurred, accepted date is January 20th, and I'll tell you later why I use that terminology.
Of 96?
1996. It gained quite a bit of publicity, even a month or so later here in the United States, when a front page article appeared in the Wall Street Journal, and was entitled "Stinky Aliens Land in Brazil."
Really?
Right.
Stinky aliens.
The Stinky Aliens land in Brazil. Where they got that from was that there were some early reports that there were some foul smells detected, but later on we found that that was not really true. But anyway, this city is in Varginha. It's a town of about 150,000 population.
That's Virginia, Brazil?
Varginha, Brazil. It's in the state of Minas Gerais. A bit north and to the east of Sao Paulo, about an hour and a half by air.
Can you give us the version that the witnesses gave? I mean, obviously a craft either crashed or landed, and then we've got live meetings. There's got to be a big story there.
Yeah, big story, investigated by numerous Brazilian investigators. Stan Friedman was down there, but he did not do any investigation on the case. He found out about it and looked at some of the data. John Mack was there not too long after it happened and interviewed 3 girls who were eyewitnesses, one of the beings.
Right.
Bob Pratt, who had spent quite a bit of time in Brazil investigating cases, was there also. I think Michael Hessen came there from Germany. But most of the investigation was done within the country by some very, very well qualified Brazilian investigators. The lead investigator in the case is a very well respected attorney in Virginia who has a UFO Institute, and they've been investigating in the field for over 36 years. His name is Birajara Rodriguez.
All right.
So everything that I'm going to tell you has been witnessed by him. To date, there's some, he has filing cabinets along the walls in his office. He operates like many attorneys with a very meticulous methodology in the collection of evidence. And the filing cabinets are full of eyewitness testimonies, both civilian and military.
How many people in all saw one aspect of this or another?
Well, to date, over 80, and I think that some of the latest statistics I hear now is that maybe up to 120. Now, one of the other differences is that we have to realize that Roswell is going on, about 60 years, and 1996 to now is only about 8 years, so we have a big difference. There are more witnesses coming forth in the Virginia case.
All right, what have we got involved in this Virginia case in Brazil? I mean, and actually, if you can describe to me, what did we have? We had a crash, just a crippled craft of some kind? Did people see it just sort of, wobbling down and then crashing and then begin to see beings? And how did they describe them?
In other words, fill in the blanks.
Okay, we have eyewitnesses to the actual craft crashing. It was a large cigar-shaped craft that apparently had a piece missing out of the rear of it, and the eyewitnesses described some smoke or vapor or some kind of trail. Now, some say that this flew around for some time before finally impacting with the ground. Also, we know that there's enough testimony now that the Brazilian authorities, military, and there's a camp which is very close to the area where this happened in Virginia, called Sergeant's Camp, which is essentially a military training base for officers. The Brazilian military was notified by NORAD that this object was coming down and given the coordinates, and so they expected it.
Oh.
So they were pretty much on the scene right after the thing impacted with the ground.
Is there any verification from NORAD that they did that?
I don't know, and how would you get into NORAD to even find out?
I don't know.
These are what we are able to obtain from the Brazilian military.
So presumably NORAD calls some aspect of the Brazilian military and says, hey, we see this, it's going to impact in your area, or we think it might impact in your area, and get ready, or what?
Yeah, that's about the gist of the story. So people see it coming down. One was a local farmer who saw it impact, and then he drove his truck around the corner after the military arrived, which was not that long after it impacted. Told to get out of there, and instead of doing that, he kind of went around the corner with a truck and watched the operation. They brought in flatbed trucks, and as you can imagine, there was a number of military personnel with metal detectors and plastic bags. And they went arm to arm and combed the field. The crane was brought in to lift the heaviest section of the piece, which was described as about as big as a Volkswagen bus.
Oh my goodness. And this man saw this first person. He saw it with his own eyes. He was that close.
Yes, he was eyewitness to all this happening.
Uh-huh.
So they got the thing cleaned up and got out of there. Well, within a very short few hours after this happened, three girls who were coming home from work and taking a shortcut through a field saw something up ahead, and they didn't know what it was. They thought that perhaps it was an animal. Now you got to remember, in Brazil there are things that walk and crawl around.
Sure.
And it's not like here. So it's not unusual to see some kind of an animal, close to town and so on. In fact, the fire department in Brazil, who is intimately involved with this case, is a branch of the military. The fire department is not like the U.S. It's like we have the Marines, Navy, and so on. The fire department is a military unit.
Okay.
And the fire department was also on the scene almost immediately. So, and there are some minor discrepancies between the fire department and the military unit, because it's like what goes on at LAX, where the LAPD is battling with the airport police. So we're not always in agreement on what they did.
Sure.
So these three girls were coming along, young girls in their teens, walking home from work, and they saw something up ahead. They thought it was an animal, and when they got closer, they were shocked to see that this was not any kind of a creature that they recognized. And the creature was kneeling by a cement block wall. I was there. I personally went to this area, which is now walled off with a steel fence.
Oh, no kidding.
And a door.
And how was this creature described by the girl?
The creature was described as being less than about 5 feet tall, with a large head, no hair, big red eyes that were upturned, a very brown and oily skin, and a set of what they considered external blood vessels, almost like varicose veins, which coursed the shoulders and up into the neck.
Wow, what a nice picture.
Yeah, it was kneeling, and what scared them was that there were 3 little protuberances on the top of his head, running from front to back, one in the middle and one on each side. So the first girl let out a scream because she saw the devil.
I'm with the first girl. I'm screamed.
And she turned around and ran quickly in the direction of home. The second girl stayed, I don't know, I guess you could say sort of in a state of shock, and actually looked at the being, and the being turned its head around and looked her directly in the eyes. Then she quickly departed the scene, followed by the third girl. And I was able to interview, when I was there, 2 of these girls and their mother, who was later taken by them to the area where the girls reported this. And by the time the mother got there, the being was no longer there.
Well, now, of course, I'm interviewing you, and I can get a great sense of you by interviewing you. And I suppose even if it was a translation kind of situation, I'm sure it was, with these young girls, you can still get a sense of the person telling the story. What kind of sense did you get from the interview?
Well, number one, they were telling the truth. It was an emotional interview, even though it's been a few years since it happened and the girls are older. They were able to tell a very clear story, and I did something a little bit different probably than what John Mack did. He interviewed them from a different standpoint than I did. I interviewed them. My goal, why did I go there in the first place? I've been to Brazil many, many times, and I've been talking at UFO conclaves down there, but always there was some case that I would be involved in, mainly abduction cases with possible physical evidence, and I really started looking for physical evidence. So I spent an extended length of time in Brazil at that particular time, and I wanted to go to Virginia, and the more people tried to keep me out, which they did.
Why and who?
Well, some of the researchers didn't want me going there for whatever other reasons. There was many rumors that the Brazilian military had frightened everybody to death. They didn't want any outsiders into the area. I heard stories that the areas of interest were not accessible anymore, that the 3 girls weren't there, other witnesses wouldn't talk, just all kinds of rumors and stuff. And so I kept insisting, and so it was set up. And of course, my quest was to go there to look for physical evidence.
Physical evidence, sure.
Sure, a fresh case, who knows? Maybe there's a piece of metal laying around the field, maybe somebody got one, took it away.
Of course.
Maybe there's something to do with abduction, maybe it's a death, but who knows?
Yeah, I'm with you. I love this physical evidence stuff. Absolutely love it.
So that was my reason for going there. There's just so much involved in this case. We have to do 10 shows on it. I've recently written a book which is coming out in France in November, and I'm looking for an English publisher, but it details everything. My interviews with the girls, my reception there, my reception at the plane. I guess I should mention that because it absolutely dumbfounded me. There was an entourage of people that were there at the ramp as I was coming off the plane. I kept looking around. I had a friend of mine.
Who were these people?
I didn't know who they were. I said to this friend of mine, who was my camera operator, and I said, I wonder what all these people are doing here. Oh, well, it was for me. And one of them, the first person to stick out his hand and shake my hand and said something in Portuguese was the mayor. So I almost fell over, and I was introduced to the mayor's entourage and all these people from Virginia. I was treated like some celeb, and I'm not used to that sort of thing.
Well, maybe you were, and there are a lot of people who might believe that the mayor's turning out might indicate that their interest is not perhaps so scientific as it is.
You know, we know of this American town, you know, Roswell, where they do so much business in T-shirts now. Stuff like that, coffee cups. And maybe he wanted, you know, a tourist destination.
Maybe, you know, I didn't know at that time what was going to happen. You know, I was fresh off the plane, but as it turned out, I don't know whether he had anything to do with it, but when people came forth, new witnesses that had never come forth before, and I was fortunate enough to be able to interview them.
Well, then obviously word made it around that you were on the way. I mean, word circulated somehow that you were about to be there.
Oh, undoubtedly. And, you know, unlike Roswell, they don't have much for sale there.
Well, I know, but I'm thinking the mayor was there because he thought, boy, this could be the beginning of something big for my town. I don't know. That's just a guess.
You know, I can't argue with that. It's just that as things turned out, whatever it was pretty good for, at least for the investigation.
All right. Well, of course, I want to know. I mean, here you've got a craft that has crashed. You've got creatures at the stage of the story running loose in the countryside or kneeling, whatever they were doing, but live creatures on the ground. So obviously, the story has got to have some sort of conclusion, the usual UFO story conclusion, I suppose, where everything is confiscated by the military and everything disappears, and the entire story then becomes unverifiable except for talking to the witnesses. That's the way almost all these stories end. Is that how this ends?
Well, this is going to end a little bit different.
Oh, well, do it. Hold on. Hold that thought. There's a good key. This one's going to end a little bit differently. Well, all right, I'll look forward to that as well. You after the break. That's what we call it, cook. In the nighttime, you're listening to Coast to Coast AM. I'm Mark Bell.
Subscribe to the After Dark newsletter online at www.coasttocoastam.com. Just click through the orange stripe to the secure server. To talk with Art Bell, call the Wildcard line at area code 775-727-1295. The first-time caller line is area code 775-727-1222. To talk with Art Bell from east of the Rockies, call toll-free at 800-825-5033. From west of the Rockies, call 800-618-8255. International callers may reach Art by calling your in-country Sprint access number, pressing option 5, and dialing toll-free 800-893-0903. From coast to coast and worldwide on the internet, this is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell.
I hope you're making note of those numbers because you're going to get a chance to utilize them coming up in this next hour. With Dr. Roger Leir, and what a night this has been. Now, before we hear the end of this story, which apparently is somewhat different than the way most of these kinds of stories end, apparently Dr. Leir had a chance to interview Brazilian doctors, the Brazilian doctors who had to do with all of this, and I wonder what they said. We'll find out in a moment.
All right, well, definitely the only polite thing to do when you have somebody disclosing information of this magnitude is to promote what he has. And Dr. Roger Leir has written a book which is called The Aliens and the Scalpel. That's a pretty good title, huh? The Aliens and the Scalpel. And we'll find out in a moment where that book is or is not available these days. Also a video and a DVD. I think that's new. I don't recall that. Scientific study of alien implants. Now, if there's a video with that should really be interesting and maybe even a little gory. I don't know. Anyway, the video and DVD, it's new, right?
Right.
When did you come up with that?
Well, we got an award for it, EVE Award for the best documentary in a UFO field at the last meeting of the Congress this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, so with respect to, is your book still available?
Well, here's the deal, and this is what the listeners will be waiting for, and the emails that I'm getting lately. Finally, the second edition of The Aliens and the Scalpel, new edition, over 500 pages, should be available for consumption next week.
Next week?
Next week.
All right. Available through what means? I mean,
well, primarily they can get it from me, because we don't have things in place yet, and if they would simply make the call, 805-495.
Wait a minute.
805-495-2613.
2613.
And if it's a toll call and they're a Coast listener, we'll reduce the shipping and handling to $1.
Okay. How much is the book?
$25.
I can tell you how to even sell more of them.
Okay.
Autograph them.
We'll do it.
Really?
Absolutely.
Well, that makes it very attractive. It really, really does. All right. That number again, folks, 805-495-2613. And the video?
The video can be obtained the same way, and it comes in the form of a video and a DVD.
Huh.
We have two of them. One, as you mentioned, is the scientific study of alien implants, which takes the viewer into the laboratories, and they can actually hear what the scientists have to say. And the second one is the Dr. Leir story, which is an in-depth interview on this subject with me by Bill Burns, who is the publisher of UFO Magazine US and the co-author of The Day After Roswell.
All right. That phone number one last time, so I don't have to answer email, is 805-495-2613. And that phone number, by the way, when can you call that?
They can call at any time, and if they just leave a message, we'll get back to them.
Okay. All right. Now, again, back to Brazil, Doctor. You apparently had an opportunity to interview some fellow physicians in Brazil. Is that correct?
One physician, I was saying physicians before because we had promised this individual total anonymity and secrecy, and so I synthetically multiplied the number.
I see. All right.
But it is one physician.
The doctor that you interviewed